thank you so much for that film. So this is not your first film. You've made several other films. What made you decide to tell a story, such a personal story about your father's story?
It's always difficult to go for so personal, and I think that it took me a lot of time to decide to do a film about my father and to tell the story of my father to my daughter, to be so intimate. I think that sometimes it takes time to go to the intimate story, and it was not my first movie. I think that I saw my father was getting older, and I felt the necessity, the urgency to make this film at a certain moment of his life when he was actually dying.
Was it difficult, or how did you come to the idea to put yourself in it instead of just telling his story?
First of all, I wrote the script for a long time, and I interviewed people. And of course, I wanted him to be in the film, but in the process of the film, he died. So I decided to do a voiceover about my father, and to make myself in the film as someone who has an heritage, his story. And I had very little footage of my father because I started to film him and already he died. So it was kind of I want him to have a voice of this with this film, but so I told the story of his life through my voice, and I thought it was interesting to have this story told to my daughter and to make a journey with her. Tell her the story of my father. Yeah, that was a form, but it took me some time to think about how I would do it, because of course when my father died, I was like, oh, I'm going to do the film anymore. I was like, I was panicking. So yeah.
So the film is played in Europe, played in Venice. It has not played in Israel yet.
Not yet. We're going to probably screen it next year. With the COVID, it was very complicated because most of the festival was online. I was not even able to go there, so we decided to wait until I could come and I could, we can have a proper screening of the film.
So how did you find, I thought it was very unique and powerful the way you had people from so many different neighborhoods. Can you talk about how you found the people to participate in the film?
I did a lot of research to find like 10 different people. Of course, I had much more, but I wanted to have like 10 different people from each city. So to make a journey in the periphery and to show the country, and I chose different generation. That was important, like older generation, for middle age generation, and then younger generation, and they all tell a story that is different, and the way they experience the discrimination and the way it continues. Yeah.
So, speaking of the discrimination, in the film we see that in the 70s, the Mizrahim were inspired by the Black Panthers to fight against their discrimination. Was there anything, to bring it up currently, was there any inspiration with the most recent, the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement that helped spark any activism in Israel?
I guess so. I guess the movement of the Black Panthers inspired the people in the 70s, and I guess that people have much more conscience about their identity now in Israel, and they are speaking it up front. They are not ashamed anymore. And you have all this new generation that you see in the film that is actually speaking about their identity and their, and their frustration and they have a voice now, let's say, and they heard much more than before. So yeah, probably, I don't know if it's influenced by America. It's a general situation in the world, you know. Yeah. But I just want to say that the Mizrahi in Israel are not a minority. They represent like 50% of the population, you know. So it's not a minority group, you know. Yeah.
Big numbers. In terms of the filmmaking, I was very taken by the artistic choices you made, the constant sense of movement, you know, either driving through the cars or the boat, or even when the people were talking, you know, and your music and everything. Can you just talk about some of your crafting the film from a creative sense?
Yeah, I think it's a style that I'm doing from film to film, this kind of movement style, which is more like, I don't like talking ahead in general, so I'm trying to have these monologues with a character where they speak and I follow them with movement of camera, and I try to put them into context of the city also, so to film them within the city, and it's a road movie, so we are always in movement also with the road.
Road movie? I would not consider this a road movie.
It's a road movie because I am traveling all the time, and we see me traveling, and we see me crossing and exploring the country from city to city, you know. So in that sense, it's a road movie. It's a road movie.
I'm convinced.
But I mean, yeah, the movement, it's something that I really liked in general in the cinema. In my film, I always try to have some movement. It's part of the language that I developed since the beginning. What else was the music, and what else?
Yeah, the visual style, the recreation with the little girl also.
Ah, okay. So I also like to mix fiction and documentary. And in that film, I wanted to mix like personal stories and to recreate these personal stories by putting this fiction into it, and mixing the forms, of documentary and fiction. And then, so I decided to use my daughter to play me because it was easier.
So that's your actual daughter.
Yeah.
Nice.
And the music was done by Joachim Imuni, who was very inspired by the film, and I think he tried to go for something actually a little bit Oriental, Mizrahi, a bit Middle Eastern, but with some modernity touch. So I think it succeeded. Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to questions. Is any, right, Rodney? Is that you?
Okay.
So the question
it's
is...
a good question because...
can I just repeat it in case people didn't hear? The question is, have the Mizrahim gotten over the course of the decades any closer to positions of power?
Less complicated, you mean here or in Israel?
No, in Israel. It seems based on basic physicality.
I want to say two things. First of all, if you compare the Black Panthers in America and the Black Panthers in Israel, the Black Panthers in America were supported by the left. And that's a big difference. In Israel, they were not supported by the left because the left was Ashkenazi and they were not supported by anybody. And actually, the only person who actually recognized this group or started dialogue with them was the Palestinian and the Arab, you know. So it was very, you know, but they were not. It was not a group that was supported by the left, and so it didn't really it was a failure in a way. It didn't transform to a political movement. It didn't bring a whole group of movement that was following them, except for, you saw one person who was American, was part of the group, but, you know, but that's the first point, and so they were it's very marginalized. In terms of integration, there are some intermarriage, but of course, but it's not the majority. And if you know, I think in Israel, people think that it's a story that is an old story that is history. But in fact, it's still, you know, as I was exploring the situation, I was seeing that all these towns that I was visiting, all these cities, are kind of ghettos, you know, and they are populated by 95% of population is Mizrahi, you know. So it's one thing to say, okay, no, it's finished, and you can take some example of people who succeeded and who made it, you know, but it is, you know, it doesn't mean that the problem is solved, you know, because in the academy, in the university, Mizrahi is still minority. There's not a lot of teacher in the academy, for example. And if you compare, for example, this group of populations in Mizrahi who immigrated to other country, like France or Canada, or even America, they were much more successful than in Israel, because they were not put in, they were not discriminated, they were not putting aside, you know. So of course you will find example of people who make it and who are succeeded, you know, to make it. And always I have this, when I have this discussion in Israel about, you know, about my film or about the film that I was making, it's like, well, but you don't see that this one and this person is minister and this, but they, you know, they call this exceptional case, you know, but that's not the majority. That does not show the all, you know, situation. And you know, I remember when I was doing the film, I saw this film actually from Raoul Peck called "I'm Not Your Negro," and there is this interview from James Baldwin with a professor from Columbia, or from NYU or Columbia, I don't remember. And he was saying, yeah, but you know, I see a lot of black people in our university, and you know, I don't make the difference anymore. And James Baldwin said to him, well, you know, I invite you to come 1 week to live in Harlem, and you will see what it is to live in a ghetto, and you will see that, yes, it is still existing, you know, the discrimination and the ghettoization of this place. Unfortunately, if you put a whole population in a place and you give them bad education, you are not give them the chance for generation to really involve to succeed, you know. I think it depends. I think that it depends. Some people, some of the group that I interviewed were quite, they felt quite close to the Palestinians, to the Arabs, and they share the same culture. In general, what we can say is that they quite live in the same area, you know, also. So they kind of share the same kind of life. There is one person who lives in the Dimona who said, you know, I am not screaming about peace, but I am actually sharing my life with the Arabs, you know, and so it's a quite complex question, you know. But the other thing is that the Mizrahi people were discriminated by the left wing, you know. So they will never be left wing, you know, because they were very highly discriminated by the left and from their parents. So they are kind of lost in terms of politics. They don't have a strong leaders who are, really represent them, really they are not identified with the left. They're, so it really depends on which people, An immigrant? They're all immigrant in Israel. But there were a group of populations that came before, and that was the establishment. And the Mizrahi came after, so, and the more people, I guess that, for example, you have the Ethiopian who came much after, and they even in a worse situation than the Mizrahi, I would say. This is another film I could make, but I guess that the wave of immigration was depend where were you coming from, of course. But for certain type of people, they were not very well received in Israel. That's a reality, The Ethiopian were not received as well as the Russian, for example, or as well as the American who came in Israel, so I guess it's continue. This kind of process continue in Israel for the depending. No, let's say there is not a big waves of immigration anymore in Israel, but you could see, for example, with the wave of Ethiopian that came in the 80s, I think, something like that. Or even later, they were also, put in very small cities near, the desert, and they were not integrated in the city, in Tel Aviv or something. So they create a big gap, between this type of population. So I don't know if I answer your question, but.
It's a start. Yeah, this film is a start to really lots of conversations, and I'd like to thank you for bringing it to our Doc NYC audience.
Thank you.